Swift, every detail is imprinted in my memory always. Under the belief he was asleep, I pulled his door open unannounced. Rather, I stood still, enthralled by the scene playing out before me. My stepson lay stretched on the bed, legs wide, his hand clutching the biggest object I had ever seen. It measured well over 16 inches and throbbed beneath his fingertips, thick and heavy. I should have gone away. I should have closed the door and turned aside, but I stayed. I started to feel a dark hunger waking up. My heart hammered fiercely, my stop of breathing. I neared, captivated. He looked up at me, a cheeky smirk playing at the margins of his mouth. He silently called me inside, and shame's weight melted into warmth. As I reached out to him, my fingers shook. He groaned softly as I surrounded him with my hand, struggling to grab hold of all of him, for just his hands could handle, the weight was unbearable. For him, help was very necessary. In that black, unexplored moment, I expanded my own. I want to take a moment to really thank all those who have decided to subscribe to this channel before we explore this story anymore. I really value your support. We also urge you to contribute and offer your ideas in the space for comments below. As the story goes on, would want your opinions. Let me pull you even more into the night that permanently changed my life. Let me say my name here. Jess, here is me. At 36, I am loving the housewife position and am curled in Wisconsin's quiet suburbs. Surface-wise, my life appeared perfect. A comfortable home, a conscientious partner, a stepson almost finished his college adventure. Tom, my husband, often traveled for business, leaving me to negotiate the quiet of most evenings on my own. Anything to fight the alone, I filled the stillness with cleaning, creating, tending to the earth. When Tom married me 3 years ago, I thought I had at least found stability. Still, under the surface our marriage was cold and stiff. Then there was Ethan, a 19-year-old tall man with golden hair and a body shaped by many hours in the gym. He represented the young, bold spirit his father tried to repress. Until that terrible night, our exchanges consisted only in polite graces. The evening started like any other, the soft sound of rain on the windows filling the air with the pleasant aroma of vanilla candles. The evening found me curled on the couch, a book in hand, trying to stave off the familiar aching of loneliness that threatened to reap in once more. Tom had let me know his flight was delayed. He would not get back till the next day. I decided to head upstairs ahead of time. I heard something odd when I strolled by Ethan's door. A gentle, agonizing moan. I felt a bolt of panic and started to feel prickly up my spine. Did he get any injuries? My head a blank canvas, I opened the door wide and there he was. Ethan stretched across the bed, his body slack but taut, fingers moving over a great distance that seemed to test the very rules of existence. My mouth felt parched and my breath stopped in my throat. Though I yearned to go, to hide, I was anchored in place and enthralled. He sighted me. He kept on, relentless. His blue eye fixed on mine, daring me, teasing me. Between my legs, a rush of warmth swept through me so strong it made me lightheaded. "Come here," he said, his voice low and sandy. I should have fled. Like attracted by an invisible force, my bare feet slid toward him. My heart surged with ever more intensity with every stride. Perched on the brink of his bed, my fingers trembled as they hung just above him. "Let me help you," my voice hardly above a whisper. I curved my hand over his thickness. His presence scorched on my flesh, intense. His piercing hiss through tightly closed teeth came from my thumb brushing the delicate underside. His sighs forced the use of both hands, as I slid up and down loving the sensation of every vein, every pulse. The chamber universe with the thrilling appeal of the taboo. His breathing started to get more labored, his hips rising to meet my touch. He bit his lip. I was bending down kissing the swelling head before I really understood what I was doing. He groaned low, his fingers tangling in my hair to guide me with an underlying eagerness. Shame had to have washed over me. I should have gone through guilt. My mind was only a burning, ravenous desire. I dug into him, tasted him, grew entwined in him, the core of him, the tune of his presence. His great height really made me respect. My body responded angrily, begging, needing more. When he at last let go with a deep, guttural growl, I delightedly ate what he had to offer. I pulled back slowly, brushing my lips while my heart hammered wildly in my chest. Ethan's eyes danced with a disturbing brightness, a sinister possessiveness hiding under the surface. "That was just the beginning," he said with a frightening tone. It dawned on me in that little instant there was no retreat possible. The threshold had been crossed, and life would always be changed. The windows let the early sun flood them with a warm, brilliant glow. Still, an icy fear crept into my very bones. I curled back in bed, isolation embracing me, the covers twisted around my legs, my body still vibrating with the pangs of the last night. Looking up at the ceiling, I tried to persuade myself that it had all been nothing more than a terrible, embarrassing illusion that could be put behind with the dawn of a fresh day. But it had been sincere. There was no going back from each caress, each whisper, each brief breath we exchanged. I yearned for the solace of invisibility, so closely around my skull. How would I possibly face Ethan once more? Burdened by this loathsome secret engraved on my very flesh, how could I confront Tom when he came home tonight? I stayed in bed longer than usual, finally mustering the strength to get up when the house fell into a stillness that promised Ethan had left. Avoiding him had become very necessary. I tried to destroy the memories. Scrubbing my skin till it felt raw, I stood under the hot water waterfall. Still, the recollections followed closely to my body. Ethan had whispered my name in a most fascinating way. His hand's firm hold on my hair was both directive and little desperate. I wanted it exactly as strongly, maybe even more so. Tears poked at my eyes, but I stood firm, not ready to let them flow across my face. I quickly grabbed a cozy sweater and pants, haphazardly bunting my hair. Breakfast would be made, would amuse myself, and by the time Tom returned, all would return to its normal cadence. That at least is what I persuaded myself of. Entering the kitchen, I halted, trapped in a motionless moment. Ethan sat at the kitchen bare-chested, a bowl of cereal waiting him, his sun-kissed complexion glowing in the morning light, muscles writhing with every easy movement. Still damp from a recent shower, his hair fell in a disorganized, boyish style. Still, his eyes focused on me revealed nothing young. His eyes caught mine, slow and deliberate, languidly confidently following the lines of my physique. My face was burning. I turned away and focused on the refrigerator, acting as though I were searching for something evasive. "Morning, Elaine," he replied with a rich, amused voice. I gave a subdued greeting, my back turned to him, my hands shook as I reached for a carton of eggs. "You look different today," he said, with a mischievous lilt in his voice, calm, radiant warmth. I closed the refrigerator door with too strong power. "Eat your food," I snapped, and my voice sliced across the air with an edge I hadn't intended to transmit. He laughed softly, a sound that made my spine start to shingle. He said, a little sensitivity in his voice. I broke 2 eggs gingerly into the sizzling pan. I concentrated especially on the stove, secretly pushing him to leave so I could have some alone time to breathe deeply. But in that instant I felt him approach. His presence hung just behind me, powerful and dangerous. "Elaine," he said, his voice suddenly softer, more personal, "you don't have to put on a front. I know you are having fun." My hands becoming fists, I let the spatula drop. "Stop," I said, my voice trembling with feeling. "Talk away from it. There was a mistake." Driven to assert my power and to restate the limitations we had violated, I turned to face him. But my will broke as our eyes clashed. His look lacked any sign of regret. Without shame, one merely has a strong, unquenchable need. "You want it again," he said, moving with a delicate grace and his fingers brushing my hip. I gasped sharply, the contact setting up a fire in my senses. I hated me for the way my body moved against me so naturally, slanted toward him, aching for him. "No," I said, even to my own ears, the sound seemed weak. Smiling, he knew he was going to win. His hands moving beneath my sweater, fingers lightly touching the delicate flesh of my waist, he shoved me against the counter. I hummed softly, my body naturally arching against him. "You belong to me right now," he said, his voice sharp and driven with a great need. "Last night, Elaine, you broke a rule. There is no turning back." I shook my head as tears started to fill my eyes. But the force of the kiss hushed every criticism that arose in that instant. His lips contacted mine. His mouth was aggressive, engulfing, depriving every breath from my lungs. His reckless enthusiasm in exploring his hands found my flesh with disturbing proximity. My fingers straying through his damp hair, I turned to him and embraced him with a fervor I had never known before. He raised me onto the counter and moved sloppily as he split my legs to place himself between them. My fingers grabbing his exposed shoulders, I gasped against his lips. The kitchen echoed our passionate kisses, our uneven breaths, the soft collision of flesh touching flesh. I had never felt such energy, such longing, and such total acceptance of chaos. He moved deliberately and profoundly as he entered me, stretching sensation to the brink of discomfort. I shouted out, my head turned back in compliance. Touching depths I had never imagined were there, he fulfilled me in ways Tom never could. Ethan shot forward, capturing the wild attitude of his early years. Every push sent shock waves of feeling across my body. I grabbed onto him tightly, giving myself to the waves of bliss and totally disappeared in the moment. Dishware fell to the ground as the counter shook under us, resonating in the margins of my consciousness. I knew the craziness of it all, the danger hovering over me, but apathy had seized me. Except for the way he made me feel as we at last turned back to one another, nothing else really meant. Our bodies wet with perspiration and shaking, the anarchy of the kitchen all around us. I realized something cold that exceeded the misery of our recent deeds. More than anything, that scared me. I felt no regret, not even the faintest hint. As Tom made his way back that evening, the home lay still. From the kitchen's threshold, I watched him and felt my heart hammer hard in my chest. He placed down his briefcase and spread his arms wide for a hug, smiling at me tired but happy. I stayed for a brief minute, caught in the fine balance of doubt, then entered his world of grace. With much enthusiasm, he embraced me and planted a soft kiss on the side of my head. He softly spoke of how much he had desired for my presence. I forced myself to grin, nod, participate, but within I felt I was sinking, the essence of him, the sensation of his flesh. Now all facets of him felt strange, distorted by the secret knowledge I carried. Ethan watched from the stairway, his eyes deep and unassuming. Our eyes locked in that fleeting instant, and a rush of feeling spun inside me, swaying my stomach in a turbulent dance. I quickly turned away from Tom, acting as though the supper is of great importance. For me, space was vital. I started to need some reflection. The dinner that evening felt like an effort. Ignorant of the oppressive, stifling atmosphere in the room, Tom chatted animatedly about his trip. Though the flavors of the food escaped my senses, I nodded and laughed at the suitable intervals. Ethan sat across from me, his foot just touching mine under the table, a cheeky smile dancing on his lips. I pulled back, bringing my glass of wine crashing down. Tom got up, a worried expression on his face, while I stammered apologies, pretending it was only a matter of coordination. Still, inside me panic seized hard. It would be intolerable another evening like this. Dinner was over, Tom gently left to enjoy a cool shower. Ethan caught me in the corridor as soon as he disappeared into the higher levels, his form trapping me against the wall. He muttered against my ear, his fingers creeping up my thigh once again. "I want you." I shoved him aside, a whirl of shame and terror coiling about me. "Stop this immediately," whisper aggressively. "He lives on the top story." "Incorrect is this. It was defective by nature." Ethan laughed softly. A sarcastic laugh reverberated around. "You love it," said he. "The rush of danger fascinates you. Your heart races with the vividness I offer your reality." Hot tears tore at my eyes. I disliked him. I disliked myself even more. "You are a young person." I breathed sharply, a sign of contempt. "You are just a young man with impulse and stupidity." His face darkened, the playful arrogance vanishing in a pulse. "When you were shouting my name in the kitchen," he said, "you didn't believe I was a boy." His voice was cutting and icy. My hand hit him before I could stop my own impulse. The corridor echoed with the harsh sound. He stroked his fingertips on his cheek and then gave a slow, dangerous smile. "You will come back to me," he said straight out. "It is useless to resist." He turned around and disappeared into the living room, shaking me against the wall. Urgently climbing the stairs, I locked the door behind me and entered the bathroom, a haven. Tears running as I buried my face in my hands, I fell to the floor. What had I produced? Whose kind of woman I had turned into? I stared very carefully at my mirror reflection, pale and ghostly, my eyes bloated with regret. The woman looking back at me was weirder. Days turned into weeks, and an intolerable tension saturated the house's atmosphere. Ethan continued to tease me, his fingers stroking against me while Tom looked somewhere else. With each contact my body turned traitor, his sensual murmurs filling my ear with dirty promises hidden from inquisitive eyes. I detested him for it, and even more intense disgust overwhelmed me. Tom watched the distance I had set between us. He tried to interact with me, to connect, but I turned him down repeatedly. Under the weight of my concealed truth, I sensed myself crumbling, but I had the bravery to tell anyone until that terrible night when all fell apart. The hour had gone late. Tom had gone drinking with some colleagues. Reaching for a sense of normalcy, I was curled under a blanket on the couch in the isolation of the house trying to lose myself in a movie. Bare-chested, Ethan stood in the doorway wearing just a pair of drooping sweatpants. Still, my heart hammered hard in my chest. He quieted himself. He only stared at me, his eyes ablaze with longing, and like a moth pulled irresistibly to the flame, I found myself engulfed by him. He ripped the blanket away from me, ran 3 quick steps across the room, and embraced me. His lips met mine, and I gave up entirely. Never did we get to the bedroom. Right there on the couch he took me once more, as if he possessed me totally, with a raw intensity and a sense of urgency. The front door creaking open hardly registered in my ears. When Tom's voice reached out to me calling my name, I hardly heard it. Ethan still listened nonetheless. He left right as Tom walked into the living room. And in that little instant time itself appeared to stop. Tom stared at us, his face a mix of horror and incredulity. He saw my messy clothes, the regret shown on my face, and the raw delight still there in Ethan's smile. Gradually struggling to understand the break of day, Tom withdrew as though he had been struck by an invisible force. He muttered Elaine, his voice shaking as tears fell on my cheeks. I tried to explain my ideas, but the words escaped me and no excuse could possibly lighten the weight of my acts. Tom turned and shot from the house. The door shut behind him, tears running down my face, my whole self quivering with grief. I dropped to the floor. Ethan loomed above me, his attitude a puzzle. He said gently, "Always supposed to happen, you simply never want to face it." I urged him to go. He left without saying anything, accompanied solely by my remorse, shame, and fractured fragments of my life. I stayed on the living room floor waiting for the morning to break. Tom did not come back. From my life he is gone, all that I kept close has vanished. I was totally responsible for that,